Hello class, this is Mr. Longden again. I'm going to show you a video today on how to use Infogram. So Infogram is an infographic software. It's available online. And what you use it for is you can create these really cool almost like posters that are online. And what you do with these is you create an infographic which basically incorporates information along with different like tables, charts, you can do pictures and different like insights or highlights that people want to look at that make it a little more interesting to look at rather than just say reading a spreadsheet or reading a document. So you probably have seen a bunch of these online in some respect. They're also like on TV too. So if you look at my screen right now, I have the Infogram. I have a project that I created, an example student project artifact. So this is what you're going to be using to put together all of that information you gathered from this student the data collection project you did, and you're going to compile all that information into one central location right here as an option for your artifact. Remember, you have different options, including this infographic, along with videos, research papers, presentations, and anything else that you can come up with. So the first thing I'd like to do is, since we know what Infogram is now, let's just do a quick overview of the different components that I'm expecting you to have. So if you refer to the project directions and also to the rubric, you'll notice that I am expecting you to have some certain things inside of your artifact that you're going to have to submit to me later. So the first thing is you're going to want to have a title. So this title should be very descriptive. It should outline exactly what this information is. So for my example, I'll use the same one that I had in the directions. So this is my overview of the average attendance per game of a local hockey team from 2008 to 2018. You also want to include some sort of an image that goes along with your project. So like if, for example, you were doing like Snapchat, for example, that might be a good picture to put as the logo for that. Or if you have anything else that you've been doing, a specific group or a company, I would put their logo here as well. So whatever applies to your research. So this was a hockey team that I did some research on, a local hockey team. And you'll notice that my information is in this box right here. I have the scatter plot. Notice I clearly have labeled all of the axes, all the years. I have all of the information for numbers. And then I also have the titles on each of the axes, so years and average attendance per game, which is people. The collected data that I also collected, which is what you put on that data collection sheet, is also included here. It's listed over here on the right-hand side. The organization of that doesn't really matter so much, so long as you include both of those items. So please include both the scatter plot and the collected data. All right, next item down the list. Notice that this just scrolls down almost like a website. So you'll just go to the next part and see the next part. All right, so this next part has what I call highlights. So this highlights section basically outlines some important information that maybe the user should be or the reader should be aware of. So like for example, you'll notice that I actually calculated the average attendance per game over the course of the past 10 years for this team. So I took all the numbers, added them together, and divided it by 10, and I got this number. So that's kind of what my mean is. So I included the mean in this to show what the average attendance was for the entire course of this hockey team's existence. And then I also looked at the standard deviation, and I included a couple of little icons here. I'll show you what those look like in just a little bit when we go through a short demo. So, and then finally, I showed the spread of the lowest to the highest average attendance total. So, whatever information you get from your data that stands out, that you think the user should be interested in, the reader should be looking at, put it in this section right here. And you can reorder this as much as you want to. You can include 2 things, you can include 4 or 5, so long as it helps make your case for what you found and how it impacts the research that you did. Okay, the next section is called trends. So what I mean by trends is this is what you notice about your information. So if you look at your data, you look at your scatter plot, and you notice some things that maybe data that stands out, or you notice that it's going up then down, or it's kind of scattered all over the place. I want you to point out those things. So if you look at a couple of mine, we'll just go through 1 or 2 of these. It says the data increases during the first half of the data set, but it also declines sharply during the second half, which you can clearly see in the scatter plot. It goes up for a little bit, then it starts to come way down afterward. So that's something important that someone might need to know about. Because a lot of what we're trying to do is we're trying to take what information you've gathered and try to have it make sense for whoever's reading it, so that way they don't have to nitpick through all the tiny details. That's what we're doing, okay? And you'll notice that I also said the first half of the data remains very consistent, as in like it's going up steadily, but then it does a very sharp decline after that. So it drops quicker and quicker. So include information like that. So be descriptive in what you see. And then the last section that you'll want to include is called insights. So what that means is we're going to take this one step further. Not only are we going to make observations as to what we've noticed about our data and our scatter plot, but what do we think that means in terms of the context of our research? So for my example, we're talking about this hockey team. I noticed that based on my observations, I could determine that the median was probably a better measure for the center because the minimum value appears to be an outlier. And remember, we talked about outliers being numbers that are very far below or very far above the mean. And it looks like that since the standard deviation is like about 700 in my case, that 2,800 number right here, this 2,874, is well below this average right here. So I would just at a glance say that that's probably an outlier or close to an outlier. So that means that this data set has outliers, and we discussed that the median tends to be a better measure of center if you have outliers, because the mean tends to be more affected by outliers than the median does. And going along with that, we also notice that there's a high spread, considering that the standard deviation in our case is actually a pretty big, decent sized number compared to what our spread looks like. So between the 2,874 and the 4,923, that's a big spread. So we want to make sure that we mention that the standard deviation seems to be pretty high, so the data is spread out. And we can actually tell that from our graph too. If you notice that the number, the 4,151 mean, somewhere kind of in here, but there are data values well above and well below that too. So that means that we've got a high spread, which means the data is not very consistent. Okay? And we can even extrapolate that further, and you can talk about what does that mean over time, or what does that mean for your data set, whatever happens to apply to your information. Okay, so that's what you need to include. You don't have to follow my example, by the book, by the number. Please don't do that. Do it in the way that makes the most sense to you. But don't forget to keep it organized and make sure everything is readable and you have it set up in a way so that way users and readers can find what they need to quickly. Okay, let's talk now a little bit about the tools. So you'll notice that I'm in the interface. This is what yours will look like too. I'll help you get an account set up if you need to, but this is what yours will look like. You'll actually probably have a blank page, so let me add a new page here. You don't have to have 2 pages if you don't want to, but I'm just going to do this for demo purposes. So notice I have a blank canvas. There's nothing on it. I just did a very standard, very basic infographic. But we have some options here. So over here is what's called your dashboard, and you've got some options. The first one is adding a chart. So you'll definitely want to do something like this. The scatter plot works really well in this case. So alongside the tools, I'm going to demo how they work too. So if I scroll down a ways, notice I've got all these different chart types area. I had a bunch up top, like bar graphs and things. But we're mostly interested in this scatter plot. So we've got scatter plot, a scatter grouped, and a dot plot. Probably this first one will work best for us. So all you have to do is you'll notice there's an insert button. If you click on it, it'll put in basically what's already a populated data set. So like for example, it looks like this is doing something with astronomy. What you'll do is you'll go over here to the right hand side where this is all your settings. So you can enter the settings in, and we'll look at those a little bit more in detail in a moment. But we'll want to edit the data first, okay? Notice this looks very, very similar to your spreadsheet. So basically all you have to do is just copy and paste your spreadsheet information of all that data you collected and put it in here. So do that. When we've already done that already, that was a previous task. So you'll want to copy and paste it and then organize it the way you want. You can even change the colors of the circles if you like to. So feel free to do that, or you can just keep them straight one color if you like. Okay? Now if we go back to settings, you'll notice we have some options. We can change the size. We can also resize it here. That's not a big deal. You can change the properties too. You can say Like I included a trend line. Might not be a bad idea to see what the data looks like over the span of your data set and how it's modeled. You can change the colors. You definitely want to enter in the axis title for both the X and Y axis under the axis and grid settings. And then you'll want to make sure that you have the correct intervals too. So make sure that those match what your spreadsheet has too. But a couple other things, just some real, just uh, things that you want to put in there to make it look nicer. So changing the font size, including a legend if you feel that that's necessary, any sort of tooltips to help people out, or formatting the data. So do as much or as little as you wish, but just include this when you're working on including your data. You can do the exact same thing with your. You can go back in here again and actually let's take a look a little bit further down. You can include other things too, like pictorials or even the tables. Like the table, for example, would be good to include too of all your data. So this one's doing like looks like some world geography stuff here, some numbers and things. So you'll want to include this as well. So you'll want to edit this data the same way you did it before. Copy and paste that information from your table. We can resize it and put that in this spot as well. It's the same exact thing. Edit data. Notice it's another spreadsheet. Include all of your information there from your spreadsheet that you included. Okay? Same thing with the settings. You can edit the table elements. You can change the colors. You can change the fonts and things like that. Do whatever you wish. Just make sure that it's readable and that it works for those that are reading it. Okay, other things. We're not going to be probably doing maps unless this actually works well for you. You can include a map as well, but I don't recommend it since we only have a couple of free maps. Since we're only using the free version, we can't really upgrade to other kinds of maps, so this one probably isn't going to work well for you. You will want to include text, however. So this text is going to be, there's a lot of options. You've got normal titles and subtitles. You've got body text. You can even add quotes if you were taking interviews from individuals about what they said. And then this facts and figures is the option that you can use to do highlights. So if like I click on this one, for example, notice I've got some options here. I can change the text inside of here, but I can also change the icon as well. So if I click outside of here and go here, I can actually change what this is. I can click on the icon, change it to one of the free ones that are available, and you choose whatever you like and then choose a color for it. So that's an option you can use for your highlights. Images, the add graphics is going to be a good option. Now the problem is that unless you can find it inside of Infogram, like you type it in and you type in something like say you want to find like a flag. If your flag that you want isn't listed here, you're going to have to go online somewhere, download it, and then re-upload it into here. That's what I had to do for a couple of mine. Notice I've got some different types of pictures here. I had to download them from the web, from like Google, for example, and then re-upload them to this site for them to work. So, and notice you can only have like 10 pictures. So actually, I'm running out of space, so I'm gonna have to get rid of a couple of these eventually. But you should have enough space to make at least one infographic and not have any issues. So that's how you do your images. And when you upload them, you just include them like this. Click Insert, like my hockey ones right here. That worked out really well. And you can resize it as you wish. And you can even add a link to it. Like for example, if it's a website that you're accessing to find information from, I would recommend adding that hyperlink. So if you're clicked on the picture, click Add Link, and then you can type in where the URL was. So do that there. Okay. Shapes are kind of cool. I added some shapes in here. You can use this to make your information a little bit more fun to read. So like if I go back to my example over here, notice that I have like boxes and things around my data. And I even put these like in colored rectangles. Those were just shapes. So I added shapes in here. You would click like a rounded rectangle and see how that goes in here. It's covering up my information, but I can move it behind like this and to back. And then it goes behind everything else. So now you can't see it. I can move to the front again. So use those, change their colors. You can change the fill and the border colors and even the transparency if you want them to be kind of like a watermark. And we can talk about that more individually if you like. But those are some options for making this infographic a little bit more fun for the user and the reader to look at. Okay? And then finally, we've also got some media. You can add in YouTube videos, Vimeo videos, and if there's a video that applies, to what you do. Just grab the URL from YouTube or from Vimeo and just throw that in there, and you'll get an embedded video that people can watch, which is actually a really cool feature. So if you have an applicable video, please include it here. And the last one's integrations. Technically, we probably don't have a lot of this unless you want to include things from like you can upload either like a spreadsheet, or you can grab something from your OneDrive, things like that. But honestly, we'll probably just copy and paste your information from your Excel spreadsheet, and then that'll be fine. Okay. You can even look at a grid down here, so that way it helps you organize it a little bit better if that's something you want to do. And you can resize it too, just so you can see it a little bit better. And don't worry, all these things will be changed or will be saved. They have a cloud-based storage system, so you don't have to worry about things not being saved. And just want to make sure that you name it correctly. Change the name up here in the top left-hand corner. You can also undo if you make a mistake. You can also do Control-Z and Control-Y, undo and redo. And then you can even view this like in a full screen. So it's a little bit hard to see, but people that are on like a mobile device, this will be a really good resource for them because they can see it a little bit better. Push escape to get out of here. And then finally, when you are all done, 100% done, you'll go to the share option over here. You don't have the option to do the private. You have to do public. So you'll give it a name, the name that you probably already have for the, so it'll be student project artifact. Click inside of here, the project description, type in what you want to type out. So like for example, mine would be, this is an example student project artifact. And then you would click on this link. You would copy that. You don't have to click on the view online if you don't want to. Copy that, and then that's what you will include when you submit this to me using our learner management system or LMS. Okay, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, please don't hesitate to come talk to me. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks. Bye.